Well, hello there. It's the Weekend Update. I'm Jim Harrington.
And I am Bill Knight. Happy Saturday. Hope everything's going well for you today. By the way, don't forget to like and share this program. I always like to mention that.
Yeah.
There's new people every day, and we want the new people to turn into more new people.
I woke up this morning and watched a bit of the funeral from Rome. Pope Francis was laid to rest. A lot of tradition. The first thing I woke up to, Bill, was the Litany of the Saints, which is a Gregorian chant, and it goes on for like 20 minutes. And what they do is they literally ask every saint in Latin to pray for us or pray for him. And I was thinking that the commentators, they were quiet during the chant, and it went on for like 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes. And when it ended, no one came out and said, well, that was the Litany of the Saints, which is a traditional Gregorian chant, which is done, and they are asking each individual saint for prayers.
Well, you know why that is?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know what it was, and they didn't know the history of it, so they couldn't comment on it. And even if they didn't know what it was or the history, you would think that their duty would be to find out what it is so you know exactly what to say. But that is the news today. Just before I went to bed, there was a story from NBC going, well, you know, the seating arrangement is not going to suit Trump's ego. Everything is a slur and a slam against him.
Awful.
You know, and that Zelensky is, you know, because the Pope likes Zelensky. Actually, Zelensky, they had to bend the rules. According to the Vatican, they bent the rules to put him up front. But Trump was up front, too. I mean, but they had to sit there and find a way to twist and throw in their negative barbs all the time, any place, any way, anyhow. They're a waste of space on, you know, on any smart device or anywhere.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. You mentioned Zelensky. They did us a side note that before the funeral, Trump and Zelensky met and talked about the Ukraine war and the peace talks. And apparently they said it was productive. We'll find out. But I thought it was interesting. There was no wasted time, but they figured it was an opportunity to directly communicate, and they did just before the funeral. I should also point out, by the way, that we are brought to you by sponsors. We talked about this in our other shows, but if you are somebody who just tunes in for our weekend program, we should point out that we have a new partnership. And in that partnership, you might hear some commercials in our programs, and that's because we've decided that we want to bring the program to the next level, get it to new people, and in order to do that, you need funding. So
funding. That's the magical thing. That pays the bills, right?
Yes, it does indeed. So we ask you to like and share the program, too. I was getting ready to call it a day yesterday, Bill, and I looked and I saw a tragic story, a real sad story. And, you know, it happened on a Friday, and I don't know how much print it's going to get. Virginia Giuffre, she was one of the victims in the Jeffrey Epstein pedophilia situation. 41-year-old, she apparently was a favorite of Prince Andrew, who apparently is the royal pig. Unbelievable. Guy used to go to Epstein Island just to hang around with children, and was supposed to think he's something special. But I wanted to point this out, Bill. She wrote in 2019. This is Victoria Giuffre. She wrote, I am making it publicly known that in no way, shape, or form am I suicidal. I've made this known to my therapist and doctor. If something happens to me, for the sake of my family, do not let this go away and help me to protect them. Too many evil people want to see me quieted. So what happens? Right before they're getting ready to, quote, release the Epstein files, this little lady, this victim, who lived on a farm in Australia, she got as far away from the United States as she could. I think she was from Florida. But she was so bruised and damaged, she escaped. She got a settlement from Prince Andrew, so she had some money. But she got away to Australia.
It wasn't that much money, by the way.
No, I don't think it was, compared to what they took from this little girl. She was 14.
Can't pay for that.
And so she's down, and all of a sudden, we're to believe she committed suicide. And the release, the statement that came out from her family, but I'm thinking to myself, she probably told her family, if anything happens to me, you've got to play along as if I committed suicide or you'll be in danger. That's
Well,
what my thoughts were.
now apparently she was driving along and I guess turning somewhere and some bus was driving 110 kilometers, pretty damn fast,
Yeah.
and slammed into her like he was targeting her, and she was put in pretty critical condition, and with kidney failure, renal kidney failure, the
Yeah.
whole nine
Was that
yards.
like 60 miles an hour, Bill? 60, 70 miles? It is fast.
It is fast. Well,
Yeah.
buses here and abroad have governors on them. They can only go so fast. And, but this guy was able to target and slam into her. Now, I saw the pictures, it looked like she was beaten. Now, I don't know if she was beaten or that was the pictures from that, but either way, there's a lot more to this story than meets the eye. And then there was the news coverage. They're going, oh, that accident was just a minor accident. Well, if that accident was a minor accident, then how the hell did she get beat to hell?
Yeah, I just checked. It's about almost 70 miles an hour.
That's
It's
pretty
almost.
damn fast because
It is.
the impact, just to put it in perspective, if somebody hits you at 70 miles per hour, double it. That is the brunt force of the impact.
Awful.
So-
And she said, I'm not suicidal. I'm in no way, shape, or form suicidal. Now, did she change over the course of the past 6 years between the time she wrote that in 2019?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Nope.
Look, there would have to be something that would mentally change your mind to do something like that. I'm not suicidal. If I committed suicide, probably 99.9% chance I didn't. There would be that 0.01% chance that something chemically changed in my brain for that to happen.
Yeah.
Because that's just not in my psyche, and it wouldn't happen, no matter what the condition.
You have to
So I
ask
don't
yourself,
believe that
where the
she
heck are
did.
the Epstein files, Bill? Why are we waiting so long for this information to come out? I mean, it seems like somebody somewhere has got their thumb on the scale, and you can't do this. You cannot. They're holding it back.
Well, where are the Epstein files? What happened to her? What happened to Epstein himself? He was a bad player, but I don't think he wanted to commit suicide. I think he figured he had some cards in his hand, in his pocket, that he could play, and all of a sudden the guards leave, and he mysteriously commits suicide.
Yeah.
There's no one around to. There's no witnesses. There's no nothing. Well, which he shouldn't have been left alone. But I don't think he was left alone. I think that the guards left. And around came Bruto around the corner, going, you know,
He was on suicide watch, supposedly.
yeah, you
I
don't
thought,
leave the guy unattended,
Yeah.
but they did.
Yeah,
Come on,
yeah, you're on
if you
suicide
believe
watch.
that-
You're watching the guy, folks, 24/7.
Yeah, there's a problem there, and but I have a lot of questions about a lot of things in life, so. That's one of them. I don't think we're getting the true story, and I think that there's something bigger out there that pulls all the strings, and they want to block any knowledge that we might have.
Well,
because
I mean, it
could
goes
lead to
down.
them.
There's so many conspiracy theories. Remember Antonin Scalia, who was maybe the most conservative and brilliant judge on the Supreme Court, constantly a pain in the thorn in the side of the liberal presidents and their administrations, and I'm sure the deep state. And one day he decides to go hunting in Texas, 4 hours away from nowhere. I mean, out in the middle of nowhere. And supposedly, when he's out so far away from any kind of help, he has a heart attack and he dies. And a lot of people have speculated that wasn't what it appeared to be either. That there was more to that story. You have to wonder, Bill. We talked about before the show started. We talked about the possible corruption even in Rome, in the Vatican, with the different popes. A lot of people have speculated that this recently deceased pope wasn't what he appeared to be either. I'm Roman Catholic and I'm practicing, and I can tell you as a matter of fact that a lot of Catholics were disenchanted with the way Pope Francis treated a lot of things. He got very political. He got very opinionated about things that were not to be talked about in Catholic society. Go ahead, Bill. You have things to
Yeah,
say.
he's made changes, and he's stacked the deck for the people that'll vote on the new pope. Now, I can't remember the name. I didn't write it down because I thought, nah, that can't be true. But it was actually an MSNBC story that they had. Well, they said, well, the next pope is so and so, and they gave the name and his age, which I thought he's 4 years over the limit because they say anybody under 84, but it's or 80, I should say, 84. But they were calling out a pope
Yeah.
that is going to be announced, and I'm going like, well, wait, there hasn't been the vote yet, or has it been predetermined?
I think that
And he's a lefty.
I think that 80-year-old limit was relatively new. I think I remember as a child that any cardinal could vote. It wasn't until it was sometime in my lifetime that they changed that to an 80-year-old limit. I don't know why they did it. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's just. And I don't think it's traditional, but they did it. Interesting things about this Pope Francis. Most popes are buried in St. Peter's Basilica. They're buried in the Vatican campus proper. This pope wanted to be buried at St. Mary Major, which is a church about, I don't know, it's a distance, maybe several miles away from the Vatican. He was buried outside of the walls of the Vatican in this basilica, and you got to wonder why.
Why?
Yeah, they said, oh, it's because he loved to go there and pray. No, the skeptic in me says there's more to this story.
He wanted his soul for what it is to rest, and he didn't want to be around other unlike-minded souls.
Yeah, well, he's buried outside of the Vatican. He's not with other popes. I guess there are some popes there. I think I heard there were 7 other popes who were buried in this basilica, which is away from the Vatican. But I don't know who those popes are. And he's also, he put Franciscus. That's what they put on his headstone. That's all they put, Franciscus, meaning that Francis. And no name, no place of birth, no date of birth, just simple Franciscus.
Why?
I don't know. I do not know. There's a lot of secrecy, and we talked about this tradition in the Catholic Church. A lot of people who aren't familiar with Catholicism and the tradition of the faith, they look at it and they're like, "Well, what is this stuff? This is kind of spooky." We talked about the Litany of the Saints, which is a Gregorian chant, and if you're not familiar with the faith, it sounds like something you hear in a horror movie, with Gregorian chants. If you went to see The Exorcist, you'd hear a Gregorian chant in that movie. But they are, they've had good popes and bad popes. They've had good times and bad times in the Catholic Church. I mentioned this to you, Bill. They had saintly popes, like Pope John Paul II, a guy in my lifetime, was a wonderful guy. He was shot. He forgave his shooter. He went to the prison where the shooter was, literally shook his hand and forgave him, prayed with him, and they made him a saint in the Catholic Church. But then there were guys at the Borgias. They were called papal royalty. They didn't have media back then. They had no real press. Everything was word of mouth. So popes could live and do whatever they want in any style they wanted, and the faithful never really knew. If you lived in France, you never heard about what Pope so-and-so is doing. The Borgias, he had papal royalty, they call it, meaning he had a family. He had concubine. He had children. They lived. They had armies, Bill. They fought the Crusades for the Catholic Church. They went off to war. So they've had good and bad times. The thing that's interesting about the Catholic Church, though, is with all of its human faults, it has survived. It has the church, the fundamentals of the church, which they don't change. Love of God, love of Jesus, Those are really the tenets of you walk with Jesus. And by the way, they're tenets of most good Christian religions. They aren't dissimilar. It's the human traditions that make them different, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
But now they're going to go through a 9-day period of mourning. They're going to have the conclave where they all get together in a room, which is kind of spooky in and of itself. All the cardinals go into a big room. They literally bolt the doors and put a seal on the door, and they stay in that room till they have a new pope. And at the end of every day...
So what do you think?
Well...
Think they're going to have a new one right off the bat?
I think he stacked the deck. They said he get over 100 new progressive cardinals who are going to...
80% of who votes, he put in there, all liberal. And from what I've read and heard is that the one spot-on person... is liberal.
What does that remind you of? The way they stack the deck in the Catholic Church with these cardinals reminds me how the presidents have stacked the deck with the judges in our country. The same way.
Well, there are things that have gone on. History repeats itself over and over and over again. And I had mentioned a documentary series. I'm not going to harp on that again, but they were talking about, this was a cult that they called it, but it never went away. I guess the religion of it died. But the tactics they used then, and this was back in the 80s, late 70s and 80s, are being used right now today. And you see the Democrats doing it, and it's being done with the illegal aliens, which was done before. But people forget. We have short-term memory. We don't remember, past our nose. So something that happened 2 years ago, that's old news.
Yeah.
It's really old news. So, you can do something and pretty much get away with it. And they're doing it again. This playbook has played out throughout history, if you really look.
Well, we're going to have a new pope, and I think, like you said, they say usually it goes... the term in it, I can't say it in Italian, but what it translates to is fat pope, thin pope, meaning conservative pope, progressive pope. We had a progressive pope with Francis. Now, if the tradition continues, we will have a conservative pope, but I'm skeptical. I'm like you. I think he stacked the deck this time, and this time we're going to have another progressive pope, which is
I think we're doing a walk through life and history. I mean, somebody once mentioned to me, that there were so many money families of the world, and they've controlled everything all throughout history in one way, shape, form, or another. All right? And you could equate that to the deep state. And maybe you could trace that all the way to one central place. I don't know. But, you look at this Pope, what he did, he took a lot of things that, you didn't grow up believing and weren't the tenets of the faith. And all of a sudden, he changed everything.
He did. You're right.
And you're going, wait, this is not Christian belief. But all of a sudden, it's beyond accepting things. It's making it a norm.
He didn't in Catholicism. It has never come down hard on homosexuality. Meaning it is said it's wrong, but it has always forgiven it. Meaning it is not like punishing. It's like it tries to get people to change, to embrace God and walk in a different direction. And they always presented homosexuality as being evil. I'm just telling you traditionally. This Pope came along, like Bill said, and he didn't say that anymore. He said everybody's different, and who
it's
am
science.
He literally said in a press conference, "Who am I to judge?" And when he said that, I can remember thinking, "Well, Your Eminence, you're the Pope, and you represent a religion that's been around and had certain beliefs for centuries, and now you're essentially turning your back on those tenets of your faith and going in a different direction."
You're rewriting faith. You're rewriting the Bible. You're reading. Yeah, it's see that's where I have a problem because when you start changing everything, and we're blurring everything. It's like it's acceptable now, okay, you know, but it don't lie to me and say, oh, it's natural, it's science. They're changing everything, but they felt that this was a time to do it.
Look, I'm like a lot of people myself. You can be what you want to be. You
Right.
if walk your own path. As long as you don't interfere with my path, as long as you don't hurt anybody by doing it, whatever you believe, whoever you want to love, that's your belief. Okay, I want you to understand that. That being said, I'm just telling you about Catholic traditions, Catholic norms. All my lifetime, certain things were considered sinful, other things were considered holy. It was considered sinful to be living in that lifestyle. As a child growing up in that faith, I was taught that. Okay? Now, all of a sudden, Pope Francis comes along and he completely ignores that belief, that tenet, those rules, and that's what throws a lot of Catholics off. He also turned his back on one of the most popular human beings on this planet, our president, 45 and 47, President Trump. He showed a disdain for President Trump. He said that our borders were unjust and almost illegal. He said we should eliminate our borders. Mind you, the Vatican has a 40-foot wall all the way around it.
Take down the wall, Pope. Take
Well,
down your wall.
He would never do that. He would never
The
do
other
that.
countries need to take down their borders too.
But his belief was a country without borders is a real country, whereas conservatives like myself, a country without borders is not a country.
We're one global community if we sit there and do that. And I don't know how we become a world of states, which is still
Well, that's what
basically.
look. That's what the European Union is. The European Union has taken independent nations, which I'll never understand how they've allowed this to happen. They had their own traditions, their own histories, and all of a sudden the European Union comes along, this globalist, deep state organization, and it says, let's all get together, and instead of being countries, consider yourself like European states.
And for the most part, those countries, what faith are they?
There are some Catholics. There are some Catholic countries, but there are a lot of them who are Lutheran. Germany, I'm thinking of. There are a lot of them who are Anglican. I'm thinking of England. England dropped the EU. England walked away from. They were in the EU, and then they figured, oh, we don't like this. We can't control our economy, and we have to go by their rules, and they dropped the EU.
Right.
But the damage has been done in England. The damage is, you look at England right now, and this great country of an enormous history. If you had told many of the leaders in England, a couple hundred years ago, that you would be overrun by illegal immigrants and you would lose your traditions and you would have to take a kneel to these strangers, they would have laughed because historically England was a proud, powerful nation. But I look at it now and I think, God, what the hell is going on over there?
I'm cool with diversity, but when I walk around and I go into, a shop that I might have frequented 20 years ago, and I do now. 20 years ago, everybody spoke English. There was a mix of different nationalities, but everybody spoke English. Now, I'm hard pressed to find anybody that speaks English. You've got the mix of the different nationalities, probably a few less,
You're right.
Anglo Americans, but and I'm sitting there going, wait a minute, we're not a country anymore, or we're close to being not a country anymore.
Traditionally, immigrants came here and assimilated. They came here. You look at the Italians, the Portuguese, the Spanish, the Greeks, the French. They came here, and then maybe for the first few years, they had their own little neighborhoods, so they got used to each other. But they all tried to learn our traditions and to become what we were, Americans. And for the most part, they did. They became Americans. What's happening now is they have their own Spanish language stations, they have their own communities, they have their own traditions, and they don't want to become us. They want to live here amongst us. They want to get the benefits of being what we are.
But they want us to adhere to their rules and their laws because, and one of the most insulting things that you can do. Now, I have no problem learning a foreign language, but not I can't learn them all. And the simple fact is, I'm not eavesdropping on conversations, but now you want to know when you walk up to a register and two people are talking and they switch languages. I'm like going, I wasn't listening to you, but obviously you're speaking loud and laughing, ha ha ha, and I'm sitting there going, what's so private that you can't either hold your conversation until you do your business transition, or that it's that secret that you can't just normally talk.
When I visited France as a guest, I tried very hard to communicate as much as I could in French. The people appreciated that. They knew that I was a tourist, but they appreciated the fact that while I was in their country, I was adhering to their rules, their traditions, their language, trying to anyway. I wasn't always perfect, but and I'm sure that my French teacher would be smiling right now if he heard me saying that, but I had some success. I took it seriously. And but they're not doing that here. They're coming here and they're hanging on to all of their traditions from their parent countries, and they expect us to accommodate them. And Bill, the government under Biden and under other presidents has traditionally bowed to them. Okay, we're going to have a Spanish language station. Every document, every application will have 3 different languages on it, or 4 different languages on it.
Well, English in a lot of documents, government documents, is not the first language that comes up. And that really throws me for a loop.
I think one of the first executive orders that President Trump did this time around was making English the language of the country.
And the left is fighting that. These judges are coming up. Everything that Trump does, they're going against. Now, the interesting thing is, a little side curve here. You talk about the tariffs, all this is going to be bad and everything. And I forget what they call it. There was a financial report basically that talks about our assets and our viability. And it came out good yesterday. The stocks were up, and all of a sudden, people are going, the pundits out there are going, I don't believe in tariffs, but actually this is going to work, and we're going to see a big turnaround, and we're already starting to witness, some of the pop and the boom. So what I'm saying is, you may hear some negative news next week, but I can tell you right now, the forefront is the news is good and getting better daily. They're going to find any little nuance of negativity and throw it in your face and say he's failing, he's an idiot, we got to get rid of him, we got to impeach him. Democrats want to do that too because they want the power. It's about power. It's not about your well-being. It's about
we talked about yesterday, and it's true, I haven't heard anybody mention this, the difference between 1929's Depression and now is we have instant media now. We have instant communication. We no longer have ticker tapes and long waits for information, and everything comes in dribs and drabs like it did in 1929. So we can respond faster as a economy, and I think that's what's happening to us right now. We are responding quickly to little nuances that come along. I think the tariff situation, you're right, is surprising a lot of, quote, experts out there.
Well, some of these experts that came out there and, the people that pick up the stuff and run, they don't vet it themselves. I will take both sides of the news and vet it because I want to be sure. I don't want it rubbed in my face like a dog that had an accident on the floor. But they'll bring up tariffs, go, well, yeah, you see where it got us in the 1800s. And again, for the Great Depression, and the stocks crashed. I'm going, I don't think that happened, but let me check. And it turns out I was right. It didn't happen. As a matter of fact, the tariffs were put in 2 years after the stock crash and actually helped get things back to solvency. But the damage was done from all the institutions and the things and everything that was done beforehand, which is pretty much a rubber stamp of what we're stupidly doing now.
Yeah.
The tariffs are a good idea. And since the 50s, we have been sitting there giving away our manufacturing capabilities. We've sold ourselves out. And
Bill, there was
one of the big things is
there was no better time to stop this slide than now. Every day that we waited, it only would be getting worse.
Subaru sat there and said, screw the U.S. and the tariffs. We're going to go to Japan because they got factories ready to go. India's got factories ready to go. It's going to take the U.S. a couple of years to get the factories back up. That's our own damn fault that we let our factories go and we let, everything go. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a problem here. And what I'm saying to Subaru, if that's your mentality, you're going to go make your cross techs or whatever it is in Outlanders or Outbacks or whatever in Japan. Screw you. And as a matter of fact,
but Honda has plants all over. They're building they're in Ohio, have been traditionally. They're in Tennessee. I think Subaru will come back. I think that a lot of these companies have knee-jerk.
They're going there because of the tariff war with, I guess, Canada. And Canada needs to wake up too because, they need us.
Canada, we a fraction.
They need
of
us
our
more
economy.
than we need them.
Canada's, I think, what is it, a fraction, a 15th of our economy? It's like the size of a state when it comes to an economy. And if a company's deciding between Canada and the U.S. as far as economies go, there's no decision. We have the strongest, biggest economy in the world. And I think that Trump, by putting the brakes on with tariffs and bringing industry back to our country, in 3 or 4 years, we're going to be the biggest powerhouse economy we've ever been, bigger than even during war times. Because I think that we're going to attack the growth like we attacked the industry during the war times. We talked about in 1939, 1940, how we brought industry converted to wartime economy and had with car companies that were making sedans 1 week were making tanks the next week. And I think that's the kind of mentality that we're approaching this change with now. That's just
it's time we do it. But we'll get ourselves in a pickle, and then American ingenuity kicks in, and we get out of it, and we roll along. But then we get lazy again. We had a problem back in the '80s. Remember when Japan was like the money power of the world, and then they made fun of us because we're fat and lazy. What did we do? We turned around and slapped that one down real quick. And China, they're kind of going, yeah, you've gotten fat and lazy.
They said it.
Now China.
Yeah, they said it. They
China
said those words,
there.
Bill.
Yeah, those were the exact words.
Yeah.
We're fat and lazy.
Yeah.
Now China has sat there. They kind of took a picture of that, and they said, they foresaw the use of rare earth minerals, which they have. They have a lot of. I'm not going to lie about that. And we've been dipping our hands into it because they set up the manufacturing. It's not an easy thing to do, and it's dangerous. We have more of it here. We just chose not to use our own, and we depended on them, and that is their stronghold on us. And we need to sit there and kick in that American ingenuity again with our coal, our steel, our rare earth minerals, and everything else that we have, because we are a big, beautiful, bountiful nation. We have a lot.
Yes.
We have been blessed. And we need to sit there and realize that. I'm not saying rape the land, but I'm saying we need to take advantage of it. You also need to take advantage of us and like and share us.
Interesting thing, we're in a bit of a civil war right now, whether you know it or not, with these judges. They're coming out on a daily basis. It's so blatantly obvious right now. They did it yesterday. I forgot which judge it was, but another
Obama appointee, yeah.
Yeah, another judge blocked something that Trump had put in place, and I can't find out where I have so much stuff to read here today, Bill. A federal judge on Friday blocked President Trump's executive order to strip federal workers of their collective bargaining rights. You may say, well, maybe that's a good thing, but the fact is, he's the president, and I guess historically they've had that right to do it. Now, all of a sudden, these judges come along and say, Trump doesn't have that right. Maybe Biden had that right, or maybe Obama had it, or Bush, but we're not giving it to Trump.
Yeah, I think I was wrong. I said a Obama judge. It was a Clinton judge.
Yes, it was. Yeah. But it was a Democrat, I'll tell you that much. And if you don't think there isn't a concerted effort, if you don't think there is a concerted effort on the part of the left to destroy and to slow down this administration, you're not paying attention.
Well, you know, it would be interesting. They have a meeting each week, 75, and I guess some of these judges are in on it too. And it's a war room meeting to sit there. How do we disrupt Trump? It is not what we can do to help the country or help Trump. It's what can we do to trip him up? What can we do to, undermine him? Which to me is treasonous, because that is an,
I agree.
Openly. It's not open. I mean, not anybody can go to it, but it is a
subversive. It's like a
covert.
A covert operation to bring down a government.
Yeah.
And like Bill said, there are these attorney generals from different states. They're all Democrat throwing in their 2 cents. You have people locally, representatives adding their 2 cents. And there's only one purpose. It's not to help us as a nation.
No, it's to take us down. And I think we need to know who these guys are. And, if we can find that out, I think everybody needs to know who these judges are.
Pam Bondi was on TV yesterday talking about this Wisconsin judge. Did you hear about this? A Wisconsin judge, her name is Hannah Dugan. What she did was absolutely amazing. Mm-hmm. She literally helped an illegal from being arrested by ICE. They came to her courthouse to scoop him up because they knew he'd be there, and she went out and angrily protested in front of the ICE people, and went back in and then told the illegal how to leave the building and not get caught. And we'll let Pam Bondi explain what happened.
And to set the stage for you and Sandra, this was truly horrific. This guy was in court being prosecuted by a state prosecutor for domestic violence battery. He had beat up 2 people, a guy and a girl, hit the guy 30 times, knocked him to the ground, choked him, beat up a woman so badly they both had to go to the hospital. And John, it's so rare for victims to want to cooperate. They wanted to cooperate. They were sitting in the courtroom with the state prosecutor. The judge learns that ICE was outside to get the guy because he had been deported in 2013, came back in our country, commits these crimes, charged with committing these crimes, victims in court. Judge finds out. She goes out in the hallway, screams at the immigration officers. She's furious, visibly shaken, upset, sends them off to talk to the chief judge. She comes back in the courtroom. You're not going to believe this. Takes the defendant and the defense attorney back in her chambers, takes them out a private exit and tells them to leave, while a state prosecutor and victims of domestic violence are sitting in the courtroom.
Pam Bondi, the attorney general, explaining about that Wisconsin judge. I mean, unbelievable. And it seems everywhere you turn, the Democrats are on the side of either illegals or criminals. And you have to ask,
why is that?
What the hell is going on with the Democrats?
I don't know.
Don't they think that's a losing stance going into a midterm election?
I think that they think they can get away with it, or they're trying to make something of this. There was No One Is Above the Law. The FBI Director Kash Patel post photo of Judge Dugan being led away in handcuffs.
Yeah, I saw that.
And the Democrats are choking on those words because, remember, nobody's above the law. Well, and I keep hearing them saying January 6th. They bring that up, and I'm going like, you might want to go back and do a little research here, because even though the media is trying to hide it, the simple fact is January 6th, as you know it happened, didn't happen that way.
You know,
January 6th was quite the opposite.
Andrew Weissman is a liberal pundit on MSNBC and NBC, and they posted a comparison piece. The first part, you're going to hear him talking about President Trump, and you're going to hear him talking about no one is above the law. No one is above the law. And then at the very same piece, you have to listen carefully, at the end of the piece, you're going to hear him commenting about this judge in Wisconsin, talking about what a travesty of justice it was to arrest a judge. Listen to the hypocrisy.
He is being treated no better or worse than anyone else. This is not selective prosecution. That this is not somebody who's singled out. That he is being treated just like anyone else. That is what it means to have a rule of law. That is what the Justice Department is really signaling and messaging here, is that everyone will be treated, as Merrick Garland has said, as equally in this country. This is really a great day for America. So there has been a violation here that we know for sure, and it is not the judge. Right, exactly. You don't do it. Even if you thought that there was a ground for doing this, the judgment call that you thought that this is the case to bring, it tells you everything. There is no adult in the room who would have said, "Are you kidding me? Why would you possibly do this?" And the answer is because we want to send a signal to the judiciary, and that's what you shouldn't be doing.
This is the hypocrisy and the frauds that the leftist commentators are. Blatant. They'll come out when Trump is being charged with crimes that he didn't do, and they'll say, oh, no one is above the law. And then they'll turn around when a leftist loon judge gets arrested and say, oh, this should never have happened. There is an adult in the room, and oh, my God. This is nonsense. But this is what the mainstream media is throwing at us on a daily basis. And
it's all over the place.
You know, Billy,
like the
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, just like the Pam Bondi thing with the judge, with what they did there, that's aiding and abetting. That's
absolutely
pretty serious.
She also talked about this judge in New Mexico, who they arrested the day before Dugan was arrested. The one who was maybe worse. He had the illegal Trans de Aragua terrorist living in his house, and he gave him an automatic weapon to take to the range, his daughter's automatic rifle, so he could do some target shooting and practice
Train him how to shoot that gun.
Yeah, listen to how it went.
I mean, when you look at the associations with this violent Venezuelan gang, Tren de Aragua, and this person that they harbored in their home, he was showing signs through clothing, we were told, tattoos. There was evidence through voice messages and text messages of his association to TDA. So what charges will Cano and his wife face, if any?
So Judge Cano, soon to be former Judge Cano, got his charges were just unsealed. He's charged with obstruction. He admitted post Miranda. He took one of the TDA members' cell phones himself, took it, beat it with a hammer, destroyed it, and then walked the pieces to a city dumpster to dispose of it to protect him. The wife also is charged with destroying evidence. Sandra, not only that, this TDA member, and he had on a necklace that said kill, something about death. He had tattoos all over him. He also had on his cell phone pictures of two decapitated victims, decapitated, gruesome photos, and he was sending them out, and whoever he was sending them to was sending back saying, hey, you need to be careful. You shouldn't be sending these. You shouldn't be texting these photos out. Not only that, these two, the judge and his wife, gave him assault rifles that belonged to their daughter. That's what they're charged with. In the criminal report affidavit, he goes to a shooting range with these assault rifles, with a suppressor, with other known TDA members, and they're shooting. This is the last person that we want in our country, nor will we ever tolerate a judge or anyone else harboring them. Amazing. And, you know, the interesting thing is you have to ask yourself, don't these people realize that they're throwing their careers away? I mean, doesn't Dugan realize that she was jeopardizing her career by doing what she did? She's a judge. She should know.
And the New Mexican judge, he should know that you're throwing it all away, but yet they readily went about their way. Maybe they were getting paid. I don't know. Maybe they were getting some kind of financial remuneration from these people to do what they did, but I won't understand it.
Oh, yeah, there's problems everywhere. Katie Hobbs having problem with her agricultural employee arrested for smuggling illegal aliens. It's the Democratic Party is riddled with it. Why is it so important to bring in, well, their voters, that's why, these illegal aliens? They have to pay back their debt.
Yeah. Scott Jennings was on CNN talking about the constitutional crisis that we're in right now with these justices, these judges. Listen.
Well, first of all, the president has said he will follow the Supreme Court's decisions. He's always said that about all of these cases. They may have some differences of opinion about the rendering of certain decisions and how to handle and implement certain decisions, but the president has always said he's going to follow the decisions. Now, I do think that these individual district court judges that are being selectively shopped by people who oppose the president, trying to issue nationwide injunctions and stop the president from governing, I think that's a real problem. I mean, it's a constitutional crisis, in my opinion, for these individual district court judges to try to tie up Donald Trump. I mean, it's obvious what they're trying to do, which is to run out the clock until he's no longer in office. It's sort of what the Democrats did the first time around. They don't want him to be able to govern. Now, the Supreme Court, as you pointed out in the polling, people have a lot of respect for it, and so does President Trump. So I really do think that if he's allowed to govern, if he's allowed to do the things that he ran on, if he's allowed to continue to, deport illegal aliens, if he's allowed to continue to do the things he told the American people he was going to do, he'll be fine. But the truth is he's running into a wall of resistance in some of these individual federal district court judges. And I think the Congress honestly needs to step in, or the Supreme Court needs to step in, because it's not right what they're doing to this presidency.
One of the lone voices of sanity on CNN, Scott Jennings, and what he said was true. I don't know, Bill, we're in a bit of a constitutional crisis, like he said, with these judges. And I don't know whether the Supreme Court is going to do the right thing. I just haven't got a lot of faith in them.
I wouldn't count on them, but they may change their rhetoric. One of the things is, you cut yourself, you start bleeding, you bleed badly. You got to get stitches, take some antibiotics. The wound, its results are pretty instantaneous, and what it's going to do for you is pretty instantaneous. The medicine takes a while for the recovery. And what's been going on to the United States, we've been bleeding badly, and especially from the assault that the Democrats and the Biden administration have done over the past 4 years. Trump has been in not quite 100 days or 100 days, and now all of a sudden we're starting to see little inklings of things. We've had little spurs here and there, but things are turning around.
Yeah,
some of the good is taking place.
You mentioned 100 days. He's doing a rally. In Michigan on Tuesday. It's talking about the first 100 days in office, and it's going to be, where does it say it's going to be? It's in
Celebration,
in Macomb County on Tuesday, April 29th, to celebrate the first 100 days. I always get nervous when he does these rallies. You know that every day he's on the, he's in government, he's a target, and we all know what happened in Butler.
Democrats will sit there and try to send in a squad that will poo-poo everything, but I'm sure that the crowds to support Trump will way outweigh that. But like you said, anytime he comes out, he's a target. And right now, he's a more important target to the Democrats, the deep state, or whoever. Whomever is calling the shots ultimately. They want him gone. They've vilified him. They've thrown every negative name out there. We're not buying it. But, they may as well, if they're going to take a bullet to his head, they may as well sit there and take a bullet to every conservative's head. And
they call us all, we're all called, as a group, we're called Nazis if we support Trump. They call him Hitler. As a matter of fact, to that point, a liberal commentator on CNN, which is kind of unusual, Batea Unger Sargon. She was very articulate. She actually came down kind of hard on the left for labeling us with the Nazi label. Listen.
To call Trump Hitler is to call over 80 million Americans, 35% of Jewish Americans, 56% of Hispanic men, and the majority of Americans who make under $100,000 a year, Nazis, because those are the people who gave Donald Trump his victory. And I just have a pro tip for any Democrats who are thinking about winning back the working class, those people who make under $100,000 a year, who a majority of whom voted for Trump. You should have a visceral disgust for someone like Larry David, who's worth $400 million, sitting there and sneering and smearing the hardest working Americans for refusing to co-sign their own disinheritance. That's effectively what they are doing when these millionaires come out here and call Trump Hitler. They are calling working class Americans Nazis because they chose the person they thought would give their children back the future they were promised by this country. And it just has to stop. And you know what? Honestly, I don't care if the Democrats get this or don't, but they should get this because this is a big part of why they have lost.
You know, she may be labeled a liberal, but I think she's on the cusp of making a change, if you ask me.
Yeah, you know, she just threw AOC and Bernie Sanders under the frickin' bus because in the Democratic thing, we've got to stop oligarchy. Well, guess what? She just admitted that the Trump people make less than $100,000 a year. We are the middle class. We are the Bible Belt, the bread belt, the backbone of this country. And you're making fun of us, and you sitting there on your high and mighty cloud, and you don't care that you've sold us out, and you continue to sell us out because you've made money off of our sweat, blood, and backs. And you're sitting there calling us oligarchs? Yeah. How dare you?
Yeah. Other piece of news, I don't know whether you heard about this, but I thought this was interesting. This is something that I've speculated on and believed for quite some time, but a new assessment from the FBI suggests that some Venezuelan government officials are, quote, likely facilitating members of the violent gang Tren de Aragua from Venezuela to the United States to undermine public safety in the U.S. That was, mind you, this is what, yesterday this came out, the 25th of April. We've known this for a long time, that Venezuela's been doing that. Trump talked about it in most of his rallies. But finally, the FBI comes out and says, yeah, we have actually factual information which would indicate that Venezuela is, purposefully doing exactly this, trying to mess up our country with their worst of their worst. So, yeah.
No, we got to get them out of here. And, if they're here for ill will, and the little bleeding heart's going, well, we can slap them on the wrist. We can lock them up for a while. They've killed, maimed, raped, whatever they've done. Capital punishment is what I believe that we should do. Hey, I want to remind everyone, thanks for listening, and we do appreciate it if you like and share this program.
So another thing that happened, they're still on Pete Hegseth's case. He came out, by the way, and he said the National Guard, there's a lot of chubby guys in the National Guard who've got to start taking their physical well-being seriously. So he wants to see him get back into shape. There's no place for fat soldiers in the military of the 25th century. I thought that was quite interesting. I would have a hard time in the military. Well, I would get an exemption with my knees and my age. But a lot of young guys, they're going home and having pizza on Saturday night, and I guess that's not helping their waistline.
Well, you know what, though? I've got a weird thought. I look at RFK, and I'm sitting there going, he's right with chemicals and things in our food. There are dyes and things that are put into our food to enhance the colors, enhance the taste, and probably can put the weight on you or make it harder to lose the weight and go through things properly, and might be a carcinogen that can cause, all kinds of ailments that we have in the United States we don't have in other countries. Why is that? Part of the health problem could be, by the products that we consume, and not the abundance of it, but just the lack of proper nutritional value, built into our country.
He said he may look young to a lot of people, but he goes out when he's visiting military bases and he does PT with his soldiers, and he said they run circles around him. He said, I'm old to a lot of people. I mean, I'm young to a lot of people on television. He said, but when I'm doing the PT, I'm the oldest guy there, and it's quite obvious. Anyway, they also did something. Hegseth formally terminated the service of every member sitting on the Department of Defense's Advisory Commission. And I was surprised at one particular name still being on that list. Here's the list. Janine Davidson, she's a chairman. She was terminated. Michelle Florney was terminated. These are all people. Colin Kale was terminated. Dana Shell Smith. These are all people who are probably strangers to most people. These are career diplomats for the most part. Eric Edelman, Undersecretary of Defense for Policy under George Bush. John Huntsman Jr., he was an ambassador during George W. Bush's administration. Corey Shake, here's the one that threw me off, okay? The one who was still listed as an advisor, and I would imagine they still get paid. Susan Rice, National Security Advisor under Obama, Domestic Policy Advisor under Biden. The last person you'd want in that commission would be someone with her background, and I guess Pete Hegseth agrees with that because that commission is no longer. They're gone, that advisory board. And I think that's a pretty smart move on his part. I should also point out, speaking of smart moves, that you should get yourself some Jim and Bill's Right Side coffee. It's a delicious coffee. It's a medium blend roasted coffee, and we also have a decaf version, too, if you are somebody who doesn't like high test. We have the finest coffee beans money can buy in that bag, and the flavor is unsurpassed. It's the best. You got to try it. Jim and Bill's Right Side coffee, available at rightsideshop.com, rightsideshop.com, or you can go to our website, itsanotherday.com, and you'll see in the upper part of our website a button. You press it, it takes you right to it. You can buy it. You'll have it before you know it. Jim and Bill's Right Side Coffee.
Wake up on the right side with Right Side Coffee.
Check out the site today. You'll find something you like, but get the coffee. It's good for you. Trust me on that one. Hey, did you see about Pam Bondi? She's going to start subpoenaing the journalist. She's going to subpoena a journalist over the investigation into the leaks.
Mm-hmm. I did not see that. I think it's about time.
Yeah, because I mean, they'll lie and squirrel around a little bit, but when you turn up the heat, they're going to start squealing on where these leaks come from. They'll be the leaks.
I get the impression after listening to Mike Davis yesterday, he had a meeting with Pam Bondi, and he was very encouraging. He said, if you are frustrated with the pace of what's happening right now as far as the Justice Department and FBI, relax. It's coming. It's all coming. All the things that you heard them talk about before they got their jobs, it's in the pipeline. It's coming down the road. Hang in there. So you can only hope, because we've seen the bad guys over and over again get away with it, Bill. Like one time after another. They do stuff, to this day, I'll never understand how that Capitol police officer got a promotion and a raise for killing Ashley Babbitt, murdering Ashley Babbitt.
Yeah. Well, they were awarding themselves for everything they did. Now every move, it's a bombshell move. It's a Hail Mary move. And none of their Hail Marys are working anymore. I mean, it's the bottom of the fourth, and we're sitting here, or the bottom of the ninth, if we want to make it baseball, and they don't even have a shot in hell.
Well, you look
batter at the plate.
Look what's happening with these judges. They're acting like we're putting a rope on a hanging tree outside and getting ready to hang these people. All we're doing is doing what is lawful. These people committed crimes, these two judges, and they were arrested. If you did it, if I did it, we'd be arrested. No decision here. If you took an illegal and you tried to help them get away from being apprehended by ICE. By the way, Bill, you heard the part where they said that when she opened the door and let him out the back way, a foot chase ensued, and they ended up catching this guy a block or two away from the courthouse. And they said it put the lives of civilians, innocent civilians, in harm because you never know where a foot chase or is going to lead. It may lead to gunfire for all we know. And so this is why she's in jail today. And
well, these judges should be disbarred, and they should serve time for what they've done, because that's just grossly wrong. It's aiding and abetting. It's harboring a fugitive.
By the way, you will see on the news, especially MSNBC or CNN, you'll see they'll show protesters outside the courthouse. Free Justice Dugan. Jailed Trump. Free Dugan. These are the signs that I actually saw on TV on one of those networks. And I thought, first of all, there must have been maybe 15 people there. But they make it look like it was some big protest. And it's nonsense, folks. These people are probably paid protesters who get a few bucks at every opportunity to go out and do just what they were doing. So you can't take that stuff seriously. What do they say? If it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. So if it seems like it's a crime to you, if it's something go ahead.
Everything I've seen where they said, there was a mass protest today, it wasn't a mass protest. I don't see these mass protests going around, but the news is trying to say it is. And MSNBC is the worst. NBC is pretty bad because there's not one damn good thing they say about the right. Not one damn good thing. You show me where it is. They can't say it. It's all left good, left good, left good, left good. And that's propaganda.
A reminder, MSNBC is for sale. If it was a great property, it would be gone already. And it isn't. There's no talk of anybody interested in buying that turkey, a turkey that was made by the left purposefully, and now they're getting what they paid for. They put millions of dollars into it, and they have a new schedule coming along too, which is it's just as bad as the old schedule, their evening schedule.
Look, it's a name, so you're buying a name, a brand name that's tarnished, is not worth anything. The equipment is old. Once you buy it, it's old, and they've had it for years. The talent have big contracts that they're obligated to, and you suck that up, and the talent sucks. I mean, this is a cesspool.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody wants to own a cesspool.
No, I don't think so either. Hey, buddy, that's about going to do it for our update program. Anything else you want to add before we wrap this up?
No, there's a lot going on. I'm kind of looking forward to next week because you got the Trump rally on Tuesday, celebration rally, the 100-day rally. So I think that's going to be good. From what I'm gathering from, Pam's making some moves, Kash Patel's making some moves. And I think it's going to be interesting if Pam Bondi does start going after journalists, over this leak thing. There might be some new revelations. I mean, I don't know. It could come back and bite us in the face, but I don't think so.
I'd like to see more information on the Epstein situation. I think that poor lady in Australia, there's more to that story. I personally, just my opinion, I don't think it was suicide, but maybe we'll
be honest with you. I think the most we're going to hear about it is what you just said, because I don't think anybody's going to touch it. I think it's going to get swept away in the news. And, even if it did come out, everything's going to focus on the Pope, or there will be a distraction that will take away from it. But there's something going on there. The Epstein files got to come out, but why is it being held up? They were promised.
Yeah.
But I don't think Trump has control of that because there's too many other people,
Pam Bondi
Democrat and Rhino, in the way.
Doesn't Pam Bondi, she's the Attorney General, she would have that information, I would think. I would think that should release that.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's something bigger that apparently has got its hands in everything. Call it the deep state, call it what you want. You heard before the show what I think the deep state could be, but we're not going into that now. There's not enough time left.
I'd like to see them come out with some kind of ruling, the Supreme Court, on these ridiculous charges and obstacles being thrown in the way of the administration by the federal judges. I think they're really overstepping their boundaries. That would be an interesting something that could happen maybe this week. I don't know. We keep hoping the Supreme Court's going to do the right thing. By the way, I mention that because John Roberts can, with a snap of a finger, make a decision with regard to what they're doing. He could come out and say, you can't do this, you're overstepping your boundaries, this is an emergency ruling on such and stop it. But he allows it to happen. So,
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not counting on the Supreme Court, but, sometimes the weight, the gravity of what is out there, I mean, the negative, the left throws out a lot of negativity, all BS. But at some point in time, the sheer mass, of everything that's going on, the whole of everything, is going to, bust loose, and that's what I'm hoping for.
And I'm hoping that we wrap this thing up now and start anew on Monday, because we will be here on Monday.
Well, you go enjoy your weekend, as I will too. Hope you have some fun this weekend. Until Monday, all I can say is one thing, and that is, hasta la vista, baby. We're out of here.
This is CRN America.